graduating.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
With your doctorate in.
Yes, ma'am.
So in our occupational therapy program.
Yeah.
So we've done some talking about what occupational therapists do and that kind of thing, but Sydney's here to present to us for, I guess we call it your capstone project, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
And she needed a place to do it, and I volunteered because it really goes right along with everything that we've been talking about, alternative ways to reach all students. This class, most people in this class are studying to be elementary teachers,
Perfect.
but the class itself is one where we look at how to educate diverse populations, kids with special needs, everyone.
Yes.
Opportunities, equal opportunities for equal learning.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And it's good to know that y'all have been talking about that already and stuff, so you're going to be familiar with some of the things I talk about, and hopefully this will really connect with y'all, because this is just that, an alternate environment that can facilitate learning and even more development than you would imagine. So, like you said, my name is Sydney. I'm a third-year OT student. I got my undergrad in Southern Middle Tennessee from Martin Methodist. It's a dual major bachelor's in biology and psychology. So that's a little bit about me. And y'all have talked about occupational therapy, and so you know OT, or who has no idea what OT is. And it's totally okay because 90% of the population doesn't know what OT is. Okay, thank you for your honesty because I was really thinking it'd be more of y'all. Nobody knows what OT is, everyone thinks we're PTs. So I'm gonna start out by just like introducing OT and kind of recapping what we do. So we are a healthcare profession and we serve the lifespan. We help people develop, recover, improve, and maintain the skills that they need to be able to participate in what they want to do. We have a huge scope of practice, and that's maybe why a lot of people don't really know exactly what we do because it's hard to pinpoint it. We do everything from physical rehab, post-shoulder injury, if you fall and break your wrist, we'll work on your strength and range of motion. But then we also work on social skills and cognitive skills, maybe for children and adults with disabilities, autism, social skills go along with autism pretty well. We always have a foot in that door. Cognitive rehab for memory impairment or traumatic brain injury survivors, intellectual disabilities, and then also environmental modifications. And this is kind of where I focus a lot of my research and interest into the effect that the environment has on an individual's ability to participate in their occupation. So we call occupation, a lot of people think work or your job, but that's not the case. Occupation is any activity that you like to do. Getting dressed is an occupation. Playing piano is an occupation. Painting might be an occupation. Feeding and eating is an occupation. So don't get too caught up on that verbiage. Basically, it just means an activity that you want to do and that's meaningful for you. So, like, what does OT have to do with y'all? Well, there's a huge place for OTs in the school system. We call it school-based occupational therapy. And what we're here for is we support both academic and non-academic outcomes of both the students and the interest of the school as a whole. So we support the parents, educators, and administrators, in addition to the children, to manage certain behaviors of children or to help them teach and lead individuals with disabilities. This might look like working on social skills, literary skills. Everyone thinks handwriting. When they think of OT in the school system, handwriting. But we do so much more than that. We do behavioral management for children who might not be able to stay in their seats for long periods of time, or who might have outbursts or oppositional defiant disorder. We do help children gain muscle and strength and range of motion to participate in sports, but it's more for a social aspect versus just, we don't teach them how to play baseball, but we might teach them strengthening skills so that they can participate easier in baseball, if that makes sense. It's more of a component thing. And then environmental design for success. We have a hand in IEP development. A lot of times we'll do occupational therapy screenings for children, and then we'll give the IEP team our recommendations for whether this child would need OT or not, and then what our OT goals would be. So we're very hands-on in that. And then we support inclusion and accessibility within the classroom in the school. We follow very, very closely the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, making sure that all of the children with disabilities are having their rights within the school system and access to the resources that they need under that act. students, but to support the parents, teachers, and educators. So I was talking about occupations earlier, or just primary activities that you'd be involved in, and for that, for a child, especially early education, a child in early education, that occupation is play. Everything they do is through play. Our occupational therapy framework defines play as any spontaneous or organized activity that provides enjoyment, entertainment, amusement, or diversion. Play is so essential and important to a child's development and learning that it's considered a fundamental right for children by the UNCRC. And there's two different types of play. There's structured play and there's unstructured play. Does anyone want to give a guess, or can they give me an example of what they think a structured play activity would be?
Would that be like at recess, or not recess, at PE, like where the gym teacher is like, okay, we're gonna play kickball, these are the rules, this is what we're doing?
Yes, exactly. You hit the nail on the head with the rules. So structured play will have rules, outlines, a clear goal, and it's often designed by the adult, whether that's a caregiver or an educator. It's structured basically. And then what about unstructured? Yeah, just free play at recess. Unstructured play is any activity that the child engages in through self-initiation. It doesn't really have a goal, it has no rules. This includes imaginary play or exploratory play. Basically, it's set by the child, defined by the child, and it doesn't have a lot of adult intervention or structure. Both of these types of play are super important because designing play opportunities can encourage problem solving, cooperation, experimentation, and for y'all, designing play effectively can be used to reach learning objectives and accomplish learning goals for children. It's the driver of learning and development, like I said, so it can be used as a tool. We use it as a tool every time we work with a child. We default straight to play activities, but we design them so that we're working on things maybe like strengthening or social skills or maybe self-soothing techniques for a kid with anxiety. But we use play to facilitate that because that's how you get the child to engage. The problem here, I'm sure y'all have talked about it, is the increased time indoors that we're seeing. It's a steady increase due to several factors in our society. We place a lot of value on academic performance and grades, preparation for higher education, which is not a bad thing. You don't want a kid to fail. However, the increased value leads to increased study times, less time for a kid to engage in what they want to engage in, more structured in and out of school time. And that in addition to safety concerns. So the world that we live in seems like it's just getting nastier and nastier outside. Crime rates, parents are afraid to let their kids go outside for fear of abduction, increased crime in areas, fear of injury, and then also in urban areas you see a lot less safe play spaces for children, especially in the outdoors. Technology, both at home and in the educational setting, a lot of technology is not compatible with outdoor play. So the increase in access and then the incompatibility with going outdoors is leading children to spend more time engaged in screen time than they are outside. And then COVID-19, a lot of kids develop super sedentary indoor behaviors throughout COVID-19, much to no fault of their own or their parents' own. It's kind of like an unprecedented event. Nobody really knew how to engage children effectively like they were before with the regulations from COVID. So all those have kind of been contributing to this growing problem that we have. However, the fact still remains that for healthy development, children ages 3 to 5 require at least 180 minutes of physical activity per day. Society might change, but that basic fact does not change. And so my solution is the outdoor environment, because recent years, several studies have indicated that the outdoor environment is the ideal environment to engage children in all sort of intensities of physical activity. From low intensity, just like, sitting outside, maybe like playing in some sand, to like running and jumping and rough and tumble play with peers. The outdoor environment can facilitate all of that. Nature-based education settings. So this means that nature is infused into all aspects of the program. It doesn't mean that a teacher has a plant that they let the kids water in the corner of their classroom. Okay, there's a distinct difference between these and then just a few nature objects in the classroom, which aren't bad. I'm saying do that by all means, but this is a specific setting, a specialized setting, where the curriculum emphasizes as inquiry-based learning through play. It's all about nature-based play. This provides children with natural sensory experiences, hands-on discovery, and most often these settings are all weather, which means the kids are outside learning, following this learning plan set by their educators in every type of weather. They only go inside or under shelter for severe weather warnings, like tornado, hurricane, hail, that type of thing. Snow, rain, sleet, super hot, super cold, they're still out there in the environment. And it's all outdoor, like I said, so there's not very much indoor learning. Now this does vary based on the nature-based setting. You can have a nature-based setting with an indoor toilet or with an indoor room for kids to nap in. I mean, that's not necessarily say, oh, well, you can't be a nature-based education setting. However, 90% of the activities are all outdoor and all weather activities. And nature-based play has recently been linked to the development of motor, cognitive, and social skills. These are pictures from the local nature-based education setting here. It's called Timbernook of the Sandhills.
What is it called?
Timbernook of the Sandhills. Yeah. And it was actually, so Timbernook itself is an organization that you can buy into, and they give you the lesson plans. If you've got the land for it, and you have to take some training classes on how to educate children and emphasize their approach to learning through nature. However, the one here, the woman who founded it here, is an occupational therapist. So she was super willing to let us come and do all our research here, and it's a really cool place. So nature-based educational settings have a lot to offer that indoor traditional settings do not and cannot. So the most important aspect of a nature-based educational setting is just nature. It's the nature-based elements in the setting. I'm talking rocks, sand, mud, plants, dirt, water, because these are open-ended and can be used in any way. If you see a traditional manufactured slide on a playground, how many things can a kid do on that slide? What are they gonna do on that slide?
Slide down and slide up.
Exactly, they're gonna slide down, that's two things. But what could a kid do if he had a stick? What could that stick be to the kid?
Anything.
Exactly. And so that goes for all nature-based elements. It's the engagement that it promotes and the creativity and the imagination. They're called open-ended various use materials, and they've been found to promote longer periods of engagement for children. The defined play areas with undesignated purposes. So when you look at maps of nature-based settings, you'll see a few open areas in the woods, and then you'll see a lot of trails connecting them. This promotes the development of motor skills because kids could walk to the different areas, they could run, they could hop, they could crawl, to all these different areas, and it's more spread out, so naturally you're gonna get more physical activity. Risky play, which is kind of like this demonstrated in this picture, this kid's climbing over a creek on a really big stick. However, it's kind of dangerous, right? He could fall. He could hit his head on whatever that tree stump is right there. I'm sure it's not that deep, but you know, he can hit his head. There's a lot of risk in this picture that you wouldn't get in a traditional setting. And while this might scare some parents and some educators, the presence of risky play and engagement in risky play is essential to children's development of their self-knowledge and awareness, experimentation with failure and success, learning their body, learning their limits, and persistence, right? He might have tried to climb over that creek and fell, and then he thought, well, I need something to help with my balance, so he grabbed a stick. So now the stick is a walking staff, and he's experimenting with his own physical abilities and making it safely over the creek. So those kind of risky play opportunities cannot be duplicated in a traditional indoor setting. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, unstructured play, nature-based education settings have been found to offer more opportunities for unstructured play than indoor settings. And this allows the child to identify what they want to do and participate in it, socialize in a natural, gradual way, and then practice autonomy and confidence with their own play skills and interaction skills with others. This unique environment of a nature-based setting in the outdoors offers unique experiences to children. This quote at the top I pulled from one of the articles, but it really stuck out to me. Every learning and play situation created for the indoors can be replicated outdoors. However, every play and learning situation outdoors cannot be replicated indoors. That's because the outdoors offers unique sensory experiences. Temperature, climate, and the different textures within a natural environment can't be replicated inside. And it's super important for children's sensory processing skills as well to be exposed to those kind of things. And then also just humans have an innate natural attraction to outdoor environments. We just always have, it goes back, biology, human development, we just love the outdoors. We have a natural attraction to the outdoors because it elicits certain physiological and emotional responses to nature, which have been found to be effective in facilitating increased recall abilities, problem solving, and creativity. So what did I do with all this information? I kind of wanted to give y'all the foundation of my project first beforehand, because that was based off all of the research I did this summer before I actually decided to do my study and design my study. And I wanted to give y'all that. It's because my study did not necessarily reflect everything I just told you. It reflected certain parts, but some of it does not. And that's because my study has a lot of limitations. So I'm about to go through my study with you and I'll explain that to you, but the most important part is what I just told y'all. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want my study to take away from what I just told y'all, because there's a lot more research, and the studies that I included in all the information I just told you are a lot more credible than my little research project, even though I think it's pretty cool. So the question I wanted to answer was, does a child's physical activity have a significant effect on their motor skill, executive functioning, and social behaviors? Based on the research that I read, it does, but I wanted to see it for myself. And I'm lucky enough to have a nature-based education center here, like I said, and so MU has a really good relationship with Dauphine Wombles, who is the founder of Timbernook, and so we got in there with her and she let us do this study. Previous research has proven that children in the outdoor setting get 2 times the amount of physical activity per day than children in the indoor setting. And children in the outdoor setting, no surprise, engage in less sedentary behaviors and higher levels of physical activity than in the indoor setting. So with that foundation, I decided to design this project. I was originally designing it to be a comparative analysis. I wanted to also have a group of children in a traditional setting. However, COVID did not allow me to do that. So it turned into just a descriptive case series. We ended up, so first I need to recognize, so it was me that, I did this study. However, I had a classmate, her name's Victoria Morgan. She did the study with me as well. She's just talking about the study in a little different way than I am. And then our capstone leader, Meredith Gronsky, she's the director of the OT program here. She was kind of like our mentor throughout this process. So they also deserve the credit for this study, 100%. But our sample ended up being 3 males, ages 5 to 5 years and 11 months, because our inclusion criteria was 4 to 6 years. And what we did is we put these actigraph monitors on them. Well, we gave them to the educators, and the educators put them on them for 3 days for a total of 12 hours across the 3 days. And then we took the average daily levels of activity. And then we administered these 3 occupational therapy assessments. And what those measured were social and problem behaviors, motor skills, and then executive functioning skills. So what I was trying to do, I was trying to connect the average daily activity with their interpretive scores on the 3 assessments for cognitive, motor, and social skills. And so after we collected all the data, we ran it through the software, and we interpreted the results from the occupational therapy assessments. We kind of put together our results. And what we found was that none of the participants at the nature-based setting were found to be below average in motor skill performance. Also, none of them were at risk for social behavioral problems. So within our OT assessments, there's an interpretation part where the assessments reveal certain things about a child's performance. And so those 2 were gathered just as like overarching results. Now, you can't really contribute that to the setting, right? Because we don't have a compare group to see if any of those children would identify as below average or having social behavioral problems, but just good to know. The more you know. None of the kids there identified in those ways. The child with the highest activity account did have the highest motor skill performance, and then the lowest activity account did exhibit the lowest executive functioning skills. So there was a significant correlation between activity and motor skills, and then activity and executive functioning skills. What we were surprised to find was that the highest activity accounts did not result in the highest social skill scores. The higher activity counts actually was associated with the increased problem behaviors, and the lower activity counts resulted, actually the lowest activity counts correlated with the most improved social skills and decreased problem behaviors. Now, this is not necessarily, you can't really say, well, so the more activity a kid has, the worse they're going to behave. Well, that might not necessarily be the case. I thought about it as a child is moving around more, so he's interacting with his environment more. He's placing himself in more social situations, and naturally when you have a bunch of kids in social situations, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be problem behaviors. And so that could be a reason why that correlation. That's just my own personal professional hypothesis about it. However, those are the results of the study. But previous studies, larger studies, more reputable studies that aren't just OT students trying to get something together for a nature-based assumption, don't indicate that. They indicate that activity equals higher social skills. Activity equals less problem behaviors. So that's why I'm going to give y'all all that pre-facing information before I show y'all what I got. Our study had a lot of limitations, which is why I say it's not as credible as others. So demographics, we had all males, a very small study sample of just 3 kids, and it was only in one nature-based setting. We can thank COVID for that. But we were dependent on the teachers for actigraph adherence, so the accelerometers that track the kids' movement, the teachers had to put those on. So there was a little bit of miscommunication some days, and then some kids had to wear them different days, so we did the best we could with what we were working with. However, that would be a limitation because we weren't there to physically put it on there at the same time every day and take it off at the same time every day. Two of the occupational therapy assessments were completed by the parents and the caregivers or the educators. So naturally, you're going to have bias. No parent wants to admit when their kid is demonstrating problem behaviors. So we have to account for the bias, and then also just kids are kids, right? They have different personalities, different moods. They could be under the influence of friends. If we were collecting movement data on a day that their friends wanted to engage in more solitary play, well then that's going to affect our data, but it might not necessarily be representative of how much the kid moves around on a daily basis. Our short data collection period can also lead to increased influence of these factors because it's less representative of everyday functioning. So with a valid study, you want a long data collection period, big study samples. We didn't get that, but like I said, we worked with what we could. So in conclusion, we are seeing an increased appearance of nature-based early childhood learning centers because more research is coming out about their benefits for children, just for learning and then also for just development in general. It offers unique play opportunities, learning opportunities, number one, but then also how to develop healthy physical skills, problem solving, cognitive skills, and then how to develop socially in a natural way. See the nature-based setting as a tool at y'all's disposal, right? Nature is accessible, it's everywhere, and it's free. So, and it's effective. That's the most important thing. It's effective in getting across therapy goals for us, but also learning goals for y'all. But I want to emphasize that it's not all or nothing, right? I didn't come in here with the intention of thinking everyone would leave here being nature-based educators or wanting to work for a nature-based education setting. That was not my goal at all. But if you take a little bit from this, maybe just like increased knowledge of how you can use nature, or maybe just like the increased desire to integrate a little bit more nature into whatever lessons you plan, then that's enough for me because it's still something. Some examples that you could do this without just completely dedicating yourself to a nature-based education center. Integrate more nature into your lessons, especially science lessons. There's several studies out there that have been proven that integration of the actual nature into science lessons has been more effective at the child retaining the information. Integrate natural elements into the classrooms. Sensory bins, we do a lot with sensory bins, but if you're gonna design a classroom with different play spaces, you could have a natural element play space. Bring as much nature into the classroom as you can, especially if you're in urban areas where children don't get a lot of that exposure. Take your lessons outdoors, if you can, if you have a safe space for the children to be outdoors. And advocate. Advocacy is one of the biggest things for me because while new nature-based centers are developing, we still have all these traditional settings with traditional playgrounds that are existing, and children are not gonna stop going to them. Nature-based settings are expensive, they're private, most of them are private, very, very few of them have licensing and can get funding from the government. So these non-traditional playgrounds are gonna exist, and they're still being developed today. So advocate for non-traditional playgrounds, advocate for more natural elements into the playgrounds of the communities that you're serving as educators. Facilitate increased outdoor playtime for your kids, plan nature-based excursions, and then also you can have a hand in developing grade level and even school-wide nature days and nature initiatives, just to get children outdoors, interacting with nature, and then reaping the benefits of that. I think that this is so important because only 3% of outdoor preschoolers are Black or African American, and only 7 are Hispanic or Latino. And the article that I pulled this from attributes that to socioeconomic status in urbanized areas. So you cannot give these kids' families more money. You cannot convince them to drive their children 45 minutes outside of town to this nature-based learning center. You cannot really affect whether that child is going to go to your school or a nature-based school. However, you can still bring the benefits of a nature-based education to them into your traditional classroom through use of kind of some of these strategies. And I'm sure you have your own strategies you might be thinking of right now, which is great. But advocacy and implementation into traditional classrooms is enough for me. If that's all y'all take away from this, that would be great. You might say I hate nature and I will never integrate it, and that's okay too. But yeah, in conclusion, there are things you can do without devoting yourself to a nature-based education center. Or if you want to, they're growing every day, and they're really incredible places to go. I would encourage visiting one at least once just to see how it is and maybe get some ideas of design. They're incredible spaces. So yeah, that's all I have. I have some references, and if y'all have any questions for me, yeah.
I have a question. The nature-based play center, it's mostly preschool. Is there a point in time where it becomes not as beneficial for children, like a certain age or something?
So the cap there's a trend, and the cap at ages is around 12.
I was just curious.
Yeah, that's the trend, is around 12. Just because it's hard to have a nature-based education setting that has all of the things, like once you start teaching vocational skills, and you need to focus a little bit more, less focus on play skills and more focus on, the educational and college prep, high school prep, they become a little less effective. But they're most effective in facilitating play, which is most important for early childhood up until the age of like 10 or 12.
Perfect.
So these nature-based centers, they teach all subjects, and is it like a school, a school
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
where nature is
All subjects.
integrated into everything?
Yes.
And where is this place?
It's in not Sanford.
Wait,
Maybe it's in Sanford.
In Lee County.
Yes.
I have it open.
It's incredible. Is it Sanford? Or-
I clicked away from that. I think it said Southern Pines.
Southern Pines. That's it. Southern Pines. I'm not from here. I'm from Nashville, so I don't know any of the areas around here. But yes, I knew it was at Southern Pines.
Aberdeen, which is Southern
I know
Pines.
exactly.
Yeah.
So is it like a private school setting, or is it, do students have to pay to go there?
Yes. And that's one of the barriers to accessing these sort of environments for education. It's they're oftentimes are private, and it'll range from $175 a week to where I've seen ones that are $250 a week, which isn't really sustainable, for children from families with low socioeconomic statuses. So there's barriers to it for sure.
My granddaughter goes to one in Kansas City.
Okay.
The school is on a farm.
Yep.
And the only concern that we're beginning to have is she is 6 and her reading skills, and the other skills are behind where they should be at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they love it.
Yeah, it's really great for engagement. It's been found to be really effective for children who have ADHD or ADD or autism because of the sensory input and because they can get out all of their energy, and there's so much to focus on. So it's been really effective with children with disabilities. However, I know that all of the different schools have different lesson plans, right? So the one here, she gets her lesson plans from the Timber Nook Association, and they give them to her, and then she goes and purchases the materials. So like pots and pans and like pipes and stuff, and then she'll facilitate the lesson, she'll teach the lesson, but all of the stuff that the children are using are those open-ended materials, and then she'll incorporate that into getting across the lesson point.
It almost sounds like Montessori going.
It is, yes, it is very, very similar to Montessori. Yes, yes. The one here, the children don't have to wear shoes. And they go to the bathroom in the woods. It is very, very, very primitive. Like I said, they exist on a scale, right? I'm doing the last component of the program back in Nashville at one called A New Leaf Nashville. And it has a little bit different of approach. They have a few buildings and they use books and they have a little bit more of a structured education plan. It's kind of like to each their own, but 85% of the time the kids are outside. They have goats and chickens and all the play areas are outside, you know. But it just depends on the director, on the founder, and you know what approach they take and what's important to them.
It's interesting that it's so much more expensive than a traditional daycare because they're taking advantage of nature, so you would think it'd be the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
less equipment needed.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
but
Right. Less equipment is needed.
And I don't know how much, looking and studying with the school settings around here you've done, but recess by administrators around here is not always looked at as something that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And if students get recess, my folks have been out observing, on a good day, they might get 20 minutes.
Yep. Yeah.
Play
Mm-hmm.
has gone completely out the window. You might be very lucky, I don't know how familiar you are with the early intervention programs here.
Mm-hmm.
You might get some of the early intervention programs that have the concept of play.
Yeah.
But go into some kindergartens and see the students marching around like little soldiers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just
Yeah.
breaks my heart when I'm listening to you talk, because all the things that are so helpful to them, just common sense things,
Yes. Yes.
are not being done.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And when I think about when you first opened up and we're talking about older things, I think about when I was a child growing up in Fayetteville. My mom said, out the door and come back at lunchtime.
Mhm.
She had no idea, you know, that's
Yeah.
what we were doing. We were
Yeah.
out, stomping around in the creeks, jumping in the mud puddles,
Yes.
climbing the trees.
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. Myself
So I
too.
can see personally
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. The benefits of it, and I was like that as well growing up. My parents just let me loose, and then you know I'd come back around dinner time, and I was lucky enough to go to a school. It was an art school, so we did have a lot of outdoor. You know, they were kind of with it already, maybe a little before their time, but I just grew up benefiting from nature and the experience of nature, and it's such like a dear thing to me. So that's why I brought it into this research, and then the research just blew me away. There's so much more than what I could spend days telling you all this. I know you probably don't want to hear it for days. Probably don't even want to hear it for this hour, but I could literally. There's so much research supporting it, and the problem that we're facing now, and then the research, it doesn't connect. It doesn't go together. The schools now, and then what research supports, could not be more opposite. And so that's why the more people that are aware of this, especially y'all, like y'all are the future of this, right? You can make a difference. I'm gonna make a difference with my therapy, nature-based therapy.
Well, that's
But-
exactly what I was getting ready to
Yeah.
ask you. So what do you think you plan to do now that you've graduated?
So I have like I said, I have a component of the program up until August that I have to do. What I'm doing is I'm going to this nature-based education setting in Nashville, and I'm assessing it for accessibility for children with mobility impairment, cognitive disabilities, hard of hearing, and low vision. And I'm gonna be making the adaptations to the facility to increase its accessibility to children with disabilities. So that's what I'm gonna do, until August at least. Then I'll take the certification exam, and then hopefully I'll be able to find a setting where, they'll want to employ a full-time OT at one of these nature-based education settings. We'll see. In about 10 years, I might just found my own, just like the OT here did, so. But yeah, it's my passion, and like if I could just, thanks for listening to me today, seriously, like, just telling y'all about it just feels, I don't know, just like someone who listens and someone who gets it, you know, cause y'all have a foot in this too, y'all are invested in this too, and so it means a lot. Yeah, any other questions? If you want this PowerPoint, I can email it to you, I can, Yeah, absolutely.
It
Okay.
aligns with the research I did last summer a little bit.
Perfect.
I did mine on movement in the
Okay.
classroom.
And
So
a lot
like
of
getting
people
outside
are
and
trying to do like that.
I can,
I'm
if
trying
you
to do movement
email it to Ms.
integration and
Poyster,
nature.
and then Ms. Poyster can email it to the rest of us.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
I actually put it up on our course site.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. for
I'm
having
just
me.
saying amen as you're talking. And you know, the other thing too is that some children, folks, come to kindergarten not knowing how to play.
Yes.
You have to actually teach them how to play.
Yeah.
Which is
Especially the
crazy,
kids
it's
now.
just, it's crazy.
Mhm.
They do not know how to play.
Yes, especially the children now, because when they're coming in these crucial times of development with the restrictions of COVID, they didn't get to interact with their peers, and they had their parents who were probably working, and so they didn't get all of these very valuable experiences. You don't realize how important it is to just overall development of a person until you see kids who didn't get those experiences, and then you're like, man, like something's off with that kid, or you know, man, like they shouldn't be doing that. They should be doing this, or you know, it's recognizable. It's severe effects.
She's writing
Is
that.
that okay? Perfect. I was about to say, I don't think I have your email. Thank you.
I was just laughing because the grandchildren come to my house, they come in the front door, they don't even stop because they know it's outside.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
They come in the front and right out
We've
the
got,
back.
yeah, my
When you
backyard
say
looks like
90%
that.
of it is nature-based,
Blood mine.
when it comes to skills like using scissors and things like that, is that where the other 10%
They don't
would
even
be?
stop. They
You
just
would teach them those skills?
Well, they'll have, they will use things like scissors, crayons, and paper, but it's all done outdoors, right? So like, they will do cutting
So
activities
it's
and art
mostly
projects.
changing the environment.
Yes, it's the environment in which they do it, right? There are no desks or chairs. They'll have the tools for that. The most basic tools needed to accomplish the learning objectives, right? So if it was a craft activity, they would have crayons and paper and scissors and maybe some glue.
But they would go into the nature
Yes.
to find the.
Yes, exactly.
And see, Coach, the other thing that she mentioned, inquiry-based learning, project-based learning.
There's such a push for technology, but I don't see as much of a push for nature. I like that that's where this was going.
You're definitely right. And I have found articles that talk about how the integration of nature and technology can happen.
Together?
Yes,
Ooh,
can
I would
happen.
love to see that.
But it focuses more on using like nature guides and a bank on like an app on your phone to help children recognize different plants and animals, or physical activity tasks that they can do outside to get them outside and moving. So it's
Like
more like
geocaching almost.
kind of, yeah, like technology as a guide to facilitate it and encourage getting outside, but not so much like watching the tablet while you're sitting on a rock. Does that make sense? You know, it's
So
more just-
nature is a vehicle and technology would be like the gas.
yeah. And they're very recent articles, because it's kind of just now come into focus for a lot of people after COVID, where now you see these children who are addicted to technology, but now they have more opportunities to go outside. So it's like, how do you get these kids outside and not just take away their technology? So I think that's definitely like an emerging area that we'll see more and more nature-based applications on phones and iPads, to get children outside.
And the Timbernook starts at 3 years old, or does it start at kindergarten?
3 years old. 3 years old, and they have some 12-year-olds. And then the nature-based setting that I'll be going to is a little more structured, so they have a preschool and then an elementary school, and then they also do homeschool camps, like week-long camps where the parents of homeschoolers can send them for certain camp topics, you know, like farming or animal care, or, you know, like botany, and then they have certain individuals who will teach kids those skills that are homeschooled. So, they're both considered nature-based centers, however, there's a lot of differences in their structure and you know, what they offer.
I was thinking too, she talked about this, we took my Girl Scouts, we went camping on a primitive island out on the coast of North Carolina. We had to dig our own holes to use the bathroom in. And, okay, I mean, I'm thinking of all these experiences I provided my Girl Scouts,
Yeah.
same kind of thing.
It is, it's just,
Canoeing in the marshes.
yes.
Yeah.
I wanna
Yeah.
take a look
often an approach to teaching and correcting children that's very hands-off. It's very like, you kind of let the children deal with problems themselves and figure things out themselves. Now, sometimes they can't, and the professors will step in, or the educators, and they'll step in, but the way that they instructed, they step in with instruction versus correction. You know, like making each
yes.
other aware of the
Oh.
other one's feelings and maybe possible solutions, but still having them do it very much themselves.
Rose, did you do that step in with instruction, not correction?
Like our patterns of power book.
Yes.
I do that at home.
That is most often accompanied with
Would that
the
look
nature
like,
setting.
so I had a situation with a child and I still don't know if I handled it correctly. He laughed at somebody after he tripped them.
Mm.
So I just explained to him, like, if he was in their position, how would they feel without telling him how to feel?
Mhm.
Would that be the same way of doing that?
Yeah, like facilitating that internal recognition and the internal problem solving versus saying, you shouldn't laugh at him because you would feel bad if he laughed at you, right? Because you're telling the kid they would feel bad. However, letting the kid come upon that themselves would invoke a little bit more empathy. Like, man, like I would feel bad, then they would feel it themselves. That's a huge component of the instruction side versus the environment side I just told y'all about of these centers. So,
Well,
Yes.
any more questions, Rose?
I have one more question. Would you know about the standard side of it, or would that not be something to ask? I was just curious to know how they integrate standards. Do they integrate more than one standard into their lessons? Because it seems like it would be science, reading, like all these things together.
well, I know from what I've seen at the one here and the one in Nashville as well, they do have separate classes, right? Like, they have a daily schedule that the facilitators have. It includes a lot of free play, but at the same time, it'll have like a math lesson and then a separate science lesson. You know, the educators have a schedule of what they're going to facilitate. However, the children are very much freely moving through that schedule. Does that answer your question? That's
Yes,
the extent I know about standards. I'm
that's okay.
not an education major at all. This is
Does
actually the
the-
most education I know.
Their website said they align with the Common Core standards.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Listen, thank you so much. for
Yeah,
coming
thank you
today.
for having me. Thank you for letting me come and do this. I emailed the presentation to you.
Yes,
so,
I got it.
And if y'all have any questions, there's something on the back of this. If y'all have any questions, just email me, whatever you need. I can shoot y'all resources. I'm here as also a resource for y'all, and we can work together. We can bring nature to children in classrooms. That's all I want.
That's wonderful.
Good. Thank y'all.
All right, thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, y'all have a good one.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Good luck with your nature-based center and
Thank you so much.
You don't have questions for me, folks? That's two folks for the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of us are at meeting.